Yeah, hallelujah. I really love the progression of the songs there. Definitely awesome with what's he's been saying to us lately and what's on my heart for this morning. But the first one there, that we might know the height and the depth, the breadth and the width of his love, right? Kind of what I had said the other night. And we do this two ways: through experience. We experience him and that height and that depth, width and the breadth of his love. And we also, through the word Corey used this morning that was perfect, is reciprocate. How else would you know his love without that reciprocation of his love? And the song starts out, "May we have power." And the way I saw that is the same thing where you said, in the time of the latter rain, ask for rain. It's a prayer out of humility, but it's not a request that hasn't already been fulfilled. It's that he has given us power, and he even said that unto him who believes is what he's given power to become the sons of God. And so it's that humble asking him, may we have that power that we might know the height and the depth, the breadth and the width of his great love. And then in the next song she was singing, he will have his way with a people. And this isn't just that he's just going to impose his will and forcefully, the way we would think as men, have his way with. That's not what he's saying. He will have his pleasure in humanity, but his way really is his way in a people, right? And the way he's done that is he's given us free will. There's no other creature in his creation that has free will. The angels, that's the primary thing that separates us from angels, is free will. They don't have it. He gave it to us. And there's no other way that you could express love. There's no higher way to express love than what? To give up your will, to lay down your life for another. And that's the beauty of Christ, the beauty of Jesus, that he opened our eyes. He did what previously was impossible, that it was possible to express that level of love, that with free will, still choosing to give up your own will for his. And so he will have his way in a people, but it's a people that have chosen to give up their will for his. And I've also thought of it too, that we talked that it's not just knowing his acts and what the things that he does. We are familiar with those, and we have the scripture to show us those. It's that knowing his way. And so when I hear that was the other thought I was hearing, is that he will have his ways, who he is, what he does, how all that he is, his nature and character will be in a people. He will have that. And so then it's a beautiful thing. And then the last song there is one of those songs that, like we were singing a couple weeks ago, how Dad said I could hear it, that he was singing it right back to us. And Dad even said it in the text the other day. He closed his text, "We are altogether lovely." And we were singing, "You're beautiful." And we were singing it to him, and I could hear it right back to his body. When that body has his way, when he has his way in that people, it's the most beautiful thing ever. And it's still one of the most, this is probably pretty sappy, but one of the things that still gets me is at weddings, when the father walks the bride down the aisle. I don't know why it just gets me every time, that it's beautiful. And the father, the same thing. It says, the scripture says, "Who is this that I see coming out of the wilderness, dressed in robes of white, leaning on her beloved?" And that's what it is. The father of the bride brings this bride to his son and presents her to him. And it's beautiful. And it's that reciprocation of, have you ever seen anything so beautiful? And they're saying it to each other, "You're beautiful. You're beautiful." So yeah, I love it. I really do think that is very much in line with what he's been saying to us. I'm going to read it again here in a minute, but the text that Dad shared with us yesterday of that appearing in his people. But Real quick, I just wanted to, I usually don't rehash. My thought has always been that if I forget to say it, then the Lord was watching over and, didn't want me to say it. But I was thinking about what I had talked about yesterday, and there was an example I was going to use Wednesday night that I didn't, that just came to my mind again yesterday, and then what Corey was saying this morning kind of reiterated it for me. But in that, what we were talking about, the bitter is sweet, or the bitter becomes sweet. There's no condemnation in that. And what I mean by that, I'll give you the example. Something happened to me recently that really bothered me. I mean like really bothered me to a level that I didn't think was possible anymore. And so then I have this thing that's bothering me, and at the same time, I know this shouldn't bother me. And so then I've got that compounding, why is this bothering me, which is bothering me probably even more than the fact that it was bothering me, right? And so I struggled with this thing for days, and I had my opinions about what was happening, and I had a lot of really good opinions about the matter. But in that situation, there was just so many coincidences that it's too many to be coincidence. And that was part of where that thought, every bitter thing is sweet, came from. And Corey, what you were saying this morning made me think of it, is that peace. We think of peace as the absence of war or the absence of conflict, and that's not necessarily the case. And so I had this thing warring in my mind, in my spirit, and in one conversation with someone, which is mostly me talking, I realized that in him saying it through me, I could hear it. He settled the entire matter. And so what was bitter to me, suddenly that sweetness is there, and the appreciation that, yeah, this is bitter. And it didn't, and my point of bringing that up about the peace, it didn't make that go away. There was still things warring for days and things you'd see but it was settled. And I had all my opinions were just, I can't even explain it to you. All my opinions on the matter were just, I couldn't even express them anymore, because I knew that anything I said out of my opinion would be contrary to the work that he was doing. And so I just wanted to reiterate that. That bitterness, it's more about the root of bitterness. That's different than condemnation. There's no condemnation. If you take on the root of bitterness where it prevents repentance, that was the warning. But no, every bitter thing is sweet. And it made me think of an example. The girls have been watching The Sound of Music lately, and I don't know, I hadn't seen it since I was a child, so I didn't remember the plot. But if you have seen it, it's about an Austrian family at the beginning of World War II, and they go through this entire movie, building up through various different conflicts and things that need to be overcome, and learning about themselves. And a lot of it is what we've been talking about, of overcoming their own mindsets to fulfill this. And it gets to the end, and the widower of the house, who has 7 children, he ends up marrying the governess, which you'd think is the culmination. Okay, everything worked out perfect. They solved all the conflict. There's this beautiful resolution to the matter. They go on their honeymoon, and when they get back, the captain of the house, they call him the captain, is summoned from the Austrian army, navy actually, to go serve in the Nazi navy. And so he has this choice of, if I reject them, he said, it's fatal to my family, and if I join them, it's unbearable. And so my point of all this is that they went through this it's a long movie, like 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and they get to what you think is this happily ever after moment, and in an instant, in one day when they return from their honeymoon, everything in their life changed. And so it's that same picture with Jacob, with Joseph. I mean, if you think about both of those examples, Joseph he didn't know that morning that he was going to get thrown into a pit and sold into slavery. He was going about his life of what he knew and thought was going to happen, and it was like a suddenly. And the same thing with Jacob. Jacob had gotten the birthright, and he had just gotten his father's blessing, and then everything's great, right? His brother wants to kill him, and his mom says, hey, you better get out of here. let's go. And so it completely, everything that he thought was going to happen, the next 20 years were a completely different path. And so my point of all this is that we don't know. Even if you just look at some of the things that are happening in the world today, anything could change in a moment. And so then it's just that not becoming bitter, no root of bitterness, but that everything is happening and will happen. It's ordained of God and is for his good purpose. So yeah, I just want to reread the text, the scriptures at least, from what Dad said yesterday morning, because I think it is perfect with what I want to say this morning, and it's just good to hear it again. And he said, I was in 1 John chapter 3. You can turn there if you want. But in verse 2, he said, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear," and where is he appearing? In us. "We shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." That's almost literally the song we were just singing, right? See him as he is. And the reciprocation of that is not to see us as we are in the sense of the way we would think it, but to see us as what he's paid for. He will have it, and that's how he sees us. So when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And every man that has that hope in him purifies himself, even as he is pure. And the other one was in John 17. He said, in verse 20, he said, "Neither pray I for these alone," his disciples that he was sitting with, "but for them also, which shall believe on me through their word, that they may all be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. And the glory which thou gavest me, I have given him, that they may be one, even as we are one, I in them, and thou in me, that they may be made perfect in one, that the world may know that thou hast sent me, and hast loved them as thou hast loved me." So the importance of reading this is that I want to set that context for everything that I talk about coming up here, that everything that Jesus is, we are. And everything he became, we became and are becoming. So, yeah, that's the importance of just rereading that. Just bring it back to the front of our minds. So, Wednesday night, January 7th, when we were praising and worshiping, I had one of those moments where you hear something, but there wasn't really words to it. And you see something, but can't really describe what you saw. And so that's kind of what I'm going to try to share. I sent it to Dad, and he said you should share that. And then I made, course of life. Didn't share it in the group. I was like, okay, I'll hold that for this. So anyway. But the picture, the best way I can describe it is manna, like the dew. And so if you think about dew and how it forms, it's not the same as rain where the water ascends and congregates and then pours out. It just comes out of thin air. And so that was kind of the picture that I saw, typically through the night when it's dark and when it's colder, that it's seemingly out of thin air, this water manifests itself and gives life to the grass, which obviously we know what the grass is from a scriptural context. So I started looking into it, and so if you turn to Exodus 16 with me. And we'll start in verse 11. So I just wanted to go and read, so what does it say about manna? And in verse 11 it says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, Speak unto them, saying, at even you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it came to pass that even the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. So this is after what we shared in our different messages, but out of Exodus here, that he had brought them out. They complained about the water. He fixed the water problem, and now it's a food problem. And they're murmuring against Moses about the food. And so he brought out, the quails came up, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And in verse 14 it says, and when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, the face of the wilderness, there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost, on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, for they wist not what it was. And so manna, the actual word itself, means whatness, or basically, in better common English, you would say, what is it? So they didn't know what it was, so they called it manna. And when the children... so they said it is manna, for they wist not know what it was. And here's the important part. And Moses, the man-child, Moses said unto him, this is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. So it's important there that the man-child that God had set over this people was able to tell them and express to them when everyone around was saying, what is it? What is this? And he said, this is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. Okay, and if you jump down to verse 31, it says, and the house of Israel called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed. So again, a small white ball. White, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Which obviously lately, whenever I hear honey, I think of the riddle. And out of the eater came meat, and out of the strong came sweetness. Honey, right? It's the riddle, right? So that's the gist here. Okay, and it goes on, and if you read through Numbers and Deuteronomy, it's similar. It gives a similar description. In Deuteronomy, I think it describes it as delium, which is like a pearl that, the trees when they drip sap, how it coagulates into like little balls. But that was kind of the description. But again, like a pearl, and whiteness was the key thing. But so here still in Exodus 16 in verse 32, it says, and Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord commandeth. Fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations. And if you remember that he gave them all different instructions about it. You couldn't keep it overnight. When they did, it stank, and the worms filled it. But you could gather double on the sixth day, and you had to, because there wasn't going to be any on the seventh day to collect. So that night it would not. So there's this whole list of instructions. And the reason I bring that up, and it's kind of cool, is that it specifically says that all of these things the Lord did to prove them, to see whether they would be obedient. And in almost every situation, so some people kept it, and sure enough, then Moses got angry that, why did you do this? And then some people went out on the seventh day to try to find it, and it wasn't there, and he got upset, why did you do this? So the point of all of that was just that there is a lot of the things that we experience in life, even in the things that he feeds us, they all have purpose for maturing us, but sometimes it's literally just to prove us, will you or will you not do what I've commanded. But anyway, so here he gives them a commandment to keep an omer of it, so it says, fill of an omer to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And again, it'll be a similar concept to we're about to do communion. It's that remembrance to all generations of what the Lord has done. And Moses said to Aaron, take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept, so the ark of the testimony. And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years until they came to a land inhabited. And they did eat manna until they came to the borders of the land of Canaan. And so just a reminder, they put 3 things into the ark. It was the 10 Commandments, if you will, but the tablets. This omer of manna went into the ark, and then Aaron's rod, which budded, went into the ark. So this was the statute he had given them for all generations. So if you jump over to John chapter 6. Yeah, John 6. Okay, so I have a lot to read here, but I'll probably just trying to decide what to read here. So the context here in John 6, it's the start of the chapter is when he feeds the 5,000. Again, it was interesting to me that he asked them to feed the people, knowing what they would say, but again, just that word to prove them and to prove what he had already planned to do. But so he feeds them, and after he feeds them in that whole event, he withdraws himself to the other side of the sea, and then they go looking for him, basically. And when they find him, he basically says, "Hey, you didn't come over here because of the miracles." Verse 26, he says, "You seek me not because you saw miracles, but because you did eat of the loaves and were filled." And he tells them not to labor for meat which perishes. And then they said, "What should we do then? That we might do the works of God?" And Jesus answered, in verse 29, it says, "And Jesus answered and said unto them, This is the work of God, that you believe on him who he hath sent. They said therefore unto him, What sign showest us thou then, that we may see and believe? And what dost thou work?" So, and I had this thought of it's similar to the manna. It's right there in front of them. They're not sure what is it. It's that whatness. What is it? And so they're asking, like we always do, for a sign, right? And they said in verse 31, they said, "Our fathers did eat manna in the desert, as it is written, and he gave them bread from heaven to eat." So they go back to the context that they know of, you filled us with these loaves, and our fathers, they ate bread from heaven, right? So what sign do you show us? And in verse 32 it says, "Then Jesus said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven, and gives life unto the world. Then said they unto him, Lord, evermore give us this bread. And Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life, and he that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth in me shall never thirst." Verse 41, "And the Jews then murmured at him, because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. And they said, Is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it, he said, I am come down from heaven?" So he's basically taking their thoughts of their historical tradition of knowing what manna is and that God fed us from heaven, which is all true. He sustained 6 million people in a desert for 40 years. Like, who else could do this, right? Not even with modern technology, which he's allowed us to have, could we get close to this. But it's that tradition of that bread of heaven. And he's telling them, I am that manna. I am that bread from heaven. Okay, and if we jump to... Okay. I was close. They got me a little bit out of order. And in verse 45 it says, "And it is written in the prophets that they shall be taught of God. Every man therefore that hath heard and hath learned of the Father comes to me. Not that any man hath seen the Father, save he which is of God, he hath seen the Father. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me has everlasting life. I am that bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness, and are dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof, and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven, and if any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of this world. So he's telling them they ate this manna from heaven and they died. But what I am here and what I'm bringing, it is my life that I give. And no one had ever been able to do this before. I will give my life. I will give it for the world. So again, going back to the beginning, just remember what I said, that all that he is, we are, and all that he's become, we're becoming. In verse 57, it says, as the living Father has sent me, and I live by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me. That's us. He's sent us. He has chosen us for this time, and we are alive by the Father. There's no other thing sustaining us. There's no manna that we're picking from the grocery stores. We are alive by the Father. And so then, in like context, he says, so that he that eateth of me, even he shall live by me. And so it's that going from being to giving life. And just to close it out there, it said, this is that bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers did eat manna and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever. And then I'll jump over to Luke 24 quick. And it says in verse 36, and as they spake thus, because this is after the road to Emmaus, and they all congregated back and said, hey, we saw him, and he comes, and he appears in their midst. And in verse 36, he said unto them, peace be unto you. But they were terrified and affrighted, and supposed they had seen a spirit. And he said, why are you troubled, and why do thoughts arise in your hearts? And this is awesome. Verse 39 here, he says, behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for spirit has not flesh and bones, as ye have seen me have. So this bread of life, when he goes through everything that we talked about the other night, on the resurrection side of this, is the picture of completion of the body of Christ, that it's not a spirit that is invisible to us, that we can't see, that we can't touch. He's here, and he tells them, behold, touch, see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as ye have seen me have. And when he had spoken thus, he showed them his hands and feet, and while yet they believed not for joy and wondered, he said unto them, have ye here any meat? And so they gave him a piece of broiled fish and of honeycomb, and he took it and did eat it before them. And again, I thought of the riddle, but it's cool here because in this instance, when they did Passover, right before he was crucified, what did they eat? They ate bread. And here, on the other side of it, there's no bread. It's a piece of broiled fish and a honeycomb. And I remember the key thing, we went through the whole thing about the honeycomb and about the sweetness out of the strong came forth sweetness. The honeycomb is that picture of the source. And so it's that transition from Passover where he's told us, I am the bread of life. And anyone that eats of me will have everlasting life. It's this transition to now he's not eating bread, but has become that source. And that's more important. Obviously, we know that's true of him, but the important thing, again, I want to say is this is us, that we're going from partaking of that manna, which came down from heaven, to becoming that source everywhere we go in the earth. And we become that source of life to all those that touch. It's not from us. He said, as the living Father has sent me, and I live by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me. It's not me, Steve, or any of you. It's him through us. But it's that transition from intake to giving, to expressing, and to feeding that same life to those around us. And so I want to jump back now to kind of picture more clearly this picture of this transition. So if you turn to Joshua chapter 5. They had just crossed over, and they came to Gilgal. They had just crossed over the Jordan, the people of Israel, so they're in Canaan. And the Lord said in verse 9, the Lord said unto Joshua, this day have I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you. And so they called the place Gilgal. And they camped there and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month. And one thing, just real quick, I want to touch on in the Passover is that if you remember, Passover is often pictured as initial salvation. But really, the Passover was not when he brought them out of Egypt. That was subsequent. But the Passover was entirely about the preservation of the firstborn. And the firstborn was what was important to God and what he paid the price for. And part of this, I think when we talk about salvation, we think about it individualistically, and it all has truth. And so that's where we kind of see that as him doing this for us was our initial salvation. But if you think about it from the perspective of the whole body, that common salvation, great salvation, eternal salvation, if you really think about the whole body from that perspective, it helps clear up some of this. But the first fruit is his. And if you remember, he told them after this that the first that opens the matrix, man or beast, is mine. And what did they have to do? They had to redeem it. And so if you had it, when you had a son, you had to kill a lamb. And it was the same thing with all the animals. They either had to sacrifice the lamb or redeem it for the unclean animals, redeem it with the appropriate animal. But so they, here on the other side of Jordan, they celebrated Passover. And it is that giving, he redeemed the firstborn. He redeemed the new creation man with a lamb, and his name is Jesus. And so in verse 11 here, it says, and they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn in the selfsame day. And in verse 12, and the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten the old corn of the land. And neither had the children of Israel manna anymore, but they did eat the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. Now this is pretty awesome. The old corn there is H669 abur, which is the same as the same word, but it means past, that is kept over, used only of stored grain. So the old corn of the land is, and okay, and so then, the H668 there, that I said, is the passive participle of 5674, which is abar, right? So how did they get this word? How did they get the old corn of the land out of abar? But this is pretty awesome that the manna ceased, and they stepped over from that dimension of that bread that they knew had come and sustained them naturally. They stepped into that, what God had already prepared for them, in a full habitation, the habitation where he fully inhabits his people. There's a food that he has reserved that we haven't tasted yet, not corporately. And so on that day, the manna ceased. And so, and it's that same picture of when we partake of that bread of life, that it's that transition from what we know and can relate to into a new level, a new source that we could never imagine. Abar. They crossed over into the old grain of land. There was no need for that manna in the way they saw it anymore. So then we got to get going here. And 1 Kings 8, if you'd turn there. And I won't read this whole thing, but in verse 1, this is when they had just finished the temple. And verse 1, it says, and Solomon assembled all the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto King Solomon in Jerusalem, that they might bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. So I thought this was pretty neat, that these gets all the elders together, and they're going to bring the ark from Zion to Jerusalem. And so when I read that, the way I pictured it is from Zion, that first fruit company, to the whole to the city of Jerusalem, but to the whole people. And so they're bringing that ark, that habitation, out of just the first fruit into the whole nation. And it goes down through, and it details how they brought it up and all the details about it. And it's interesting to me, again, that it's elders. It is that first fruit, the man-child, if you will. But if you get down to verse 8, and so they set the ark in place in the temple. And in verse 8 it says, "And they drew out the staves, that the ends of the staves were seen out in the holy place before the oracle, and they were not seen without, and there they are unto this day." So if you remember from previous, this is a picture of permanence. The ark had no need to ever move again. It had settled into its permanent habitation. And so now in verse 9, "There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables of stone, which Moses had put there at Horeb, and when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt." So now we went from when they were in the wilderness, and it was in the tents, and through all the history of Israel up to this point, there was 3 things in the ark, right? There's the tables of stone, which are still there, and then the other 2 things, the manna, the omer of manna, and the rod of Aaron, are not there anymore. And so if you'll jump over to Revelation chapter 12. And verse 5, it says, "And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the women fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." Again, she fled to the wilderness, where she has a God prepared the place for her. And it's interesting, it says they should feed her there 1,260 days. And so who is they? For me, it's the plural of the man that signifies the man-child. It's not Jesus alone. It's what I said at the beginning when we started. It's not one man alone. It's one whole man, head and body. Jesus the firstborn, and his body the witness to him. So I hope I can explain this in the way I saw it, but when that ark is settled in its permanent resting place, it's a transition of that manna is no longer present in that ark. And instead, just as it is here in Revelation chapter 12, that manna, the ark has become that bread of life. And so just as Jesus, the forerunner, did this for the children of Israel, and what he was telling them all through John chapter 6, "I am that bread of life," the man-child is the same thing. He has become that bread of life to all those, to the church in this picture, who has a place prepared of God in the wilderness. So then I thought back to manna, like dew. And this is really where we are, us individually as this local assembly, but throughout the whole entire globe. It's that out of thin air, he's bringing his people and bringing himself into visibility. Something that you can't see. When you went to bed, there was no water there. There's nothing to sustain the creation or the people. But in the morning, he's brought out of thin air life and a light to people. And that's one thing you can feel the dew on the grass, but what really makes it noticeable is when that sun comes up and it glistens right on the glass. It becomes visible. And so, I don't know if I even came close to doing it justice, but this is what he's doing. He's bringing himself out of invisibility, and that wherever you go in your life, whether it's work or just in general, that everywhere you go, you bring that life to anyone who will listen and who will believe. And so it's that transition from being fed to feeding. And And in all that, the most important part is that he becomes visible. And when he becomes visible, it's beautiful. And we say to each other, you're beautiful. Why? Because you look like Jesus. And is there anything more beautiful than Jesus and what he's done for us? That's who we are. Everything he is who we are. And everything he became, we're becoming. We become that manna, that bread of life, that everyone might know him and that he might be glorified in all the earth. That I think it's probably a good time to do communion.